All right, welcome everyone. Today on our Coach's Corner, I have Coach Matt Fallon and Coach Carey. I never say Carey's last name when I call her Coach Carey because Coach Carey just sounds so good. But I have to call Matt Coach Matt Fallon. I guess because there's 8 Matts in our facility and one other coach. And the benefits of doing the Zoom call while you're in the middle of the gym is people randomly come up and walk to you. So they can be guests on too. But today I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about group design or our group CrossFit model versus individual design. And, what I thought was a good approach to this was to go over some of the pros and cons. And as I was preparing for how I would moderate this, I realized that a lot of the pros were also cons of the group model. So we're kind of just going to have a discussion here. And what I'd like to start off by saying, so people understand where we're coming from, is our gym is still a CrossFit gym, and we do run a group model. Our group model has changed, and the reason why it's changed and why we're doing things a little bit differently now is because when we first started off, our classes were so small, and we were able to bring people into the group model and give them some specific coaching that they needed a lot easier than it is now. And now I think what we have is a traditional or bigger classes like we see in a lot of other CrossFit gyms. And I'm starting to see as a business owner that group design has its major flaws. And there's a lot of reasons why people should be doing individual design, whether it's working with a coach one-on-one or receiving some individual programming. And for those that don't know what the goal of our group model is, for me, exactly what it is, it's GPP, General Physical Preparedness. And where I see that it works well is people that are just starting off with an exercise program and never had much consistency or never really worked that hard before. I find that the group model works great to get them results pretty quickly. And then what I'm seeing now after being in this business for over 20 years is those things quickly fall off and people no longer improve. And, what we're going to talk about today maybe is how individual design can kind of help that and we're going to talk about some of the, the pros and cons of the group model. The biggest thing that I see in the group model, and this maybe has nothing to do with exercise and why people are so drawn to the group model, is the camaraderie that comes out of the group model and the enjoyment people get out of that. And the group model, when I look back at what CrossFit was and what Greg Glassman tried to do when he started his gym in Santa Cruz, it was really for first responders, right? And he used to say things like, go through hell together and laugh about it after. And that created a certain vibe, and a certain camaraderie between people in the class. And a lot of gyms like ours ran with that, and we thought that was the magic in the group design. And now we're seeing a lot of different things pop up in the class. And I could start this conversation off by saying I had a conversation with an athlete yesterday, and I asked her how her back was, right? And the answer to the question I got was, it's good. I'm able to receive modifications in classes from the coaches, so I think I'm doing okay. And my answer, or my return answer to that was, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, modifications in the group setting are mostly only preventative. They don't really cause that many improvements, and to be more specific about that, if someone can't do any overhead lifting because of a shoulder issue or any overhead pulling in that vertical plane, and we give them ring rows not necessarily going to improve that issue. But what it's going to do is make them get through that session safely and help them get a workout in. So I was wondering, Kerry, what's some of the things that you've seen about the group design that maybe is a flaw that you can make better with maybe more individual design?
Well, I would say exactly like you said. If you're looking to ultimately improve an issue and you're simply modifying because of an issue, long term, that's a quick fix. And while that might allow for the improvement of acute pain, it's not going to improve range of motion. It's not going to improve strength if that's the issue. It's not going to improve if someone wants to get better at a specific movement, one of which that requires, something that they're currently limited in, without taking the next step, especially the step that's specific to that individual. You're not going to ultimately get better at whatever that problem is. But that also has to be a goal too. If your goal isn't, if you don't ever care to pull overhead, then who cares? That's a non-issue. But if you have shoulder pain pulling overhead and you're only doing ring rows right now because you have pain, well, if you only continue to do ring rows, you're all of a sudden not going to be able to pull overhead. You're just going to get really good at ring rows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's been your experience with it, Matt, as far as coaching? Because you've done a little bit of both, coaching individually and coaching the group model. Where do you see the biggest flaws in the group model, and how are you kind of working with your folks to kind of fix that?
Well, I think saying that modifications in the group class are just like band-aids is a pretty safe way to describe those things. It's really what you're doing, because for the most part, whether or not the individual views them this way or not, when it comes to limits in movement or movements that cause pain and things that affect our everyday life, they're pretty high level issues. Like if you can't bend down, touch your toes, that's a serious problem. If you're, if you're only in your 40s, if it causes you so much pain, you put your hands over your head and it hurts, and that's a high level issue. The modifications that we give people in class are low level solutions to super high level problems. And I think it's outlining those things as, yes, if we only give you ring rows, you won't experience what's giving you an issue in class. But when you go home and pick your kids up and throw your kid overhead, and you do whatever you need to do at home and it still hurts, then what problem is it actually solving? You can come work out, but we're not solving any problems for you. Mm-hmm. So I think what I've experienced and what I've kind of seen is outlining what the shoulder pain you feel when you're doing kipping pull-ups does to you when you're not in the gym is the best way to outline to people what we're really trying to do when it comes to prescribing an individualized program to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm. And what I find it difficult, and we've had this discussion a lot of times between the coaches, is we have someone new coming in, and it's so hard, even if you explain everything and have everything written down about what that athlete's limitations are coming into the group setting. Number one, how is someone expected to come into class and all the coaches know exactly what their limitations are and exactly what to give them in a class of 18? When we have 18 people to get through a workout, it's really, really hard. And we do the best we can, but this is one of the main reasons why we have to bring people out of the group program to educate them on the things that they need to be doing on their own. Another thing that I would like to touch on is relative intensity. I think the group model is the number one ways to get intensity to a certain level that you couldn't get on your own. And my question to you guys is that always good? Is it always good to exercise at a super intense level? Like, Kerry, do you think people need to be doing high intensity activity? I don't. I already know the answer to that you're probably going to give. But what's your feeling on doing CrossFit 5 or 6 days a week?
CrossFit, as it's written most places, 5 or 6 days a week, probably very unnecessary unless you plan to be a CrossFit athlete.
Yeah.
It's just, again, especially if you're not doing the things you should be to recover from those workouts, to do the next one. Which most people, if they're, weekend warriors or just, casual CrossFitters, most people are probably not living their life eating perfectly, sleeping perfectly, hydrating perfectly. In order to do those workouts 5 or 6 days a week is aggressive.
Yeah.
Very aggressive. Especially if you're coming in not having, checked all the boxes of things you should have, like prerequisite strength, range of motion, stuff like that ahead of time before you're starting a program. Even if you do, things come up as you go.
Oh, certainly. And Matt, do you think it's possible to know everyone's history when they come into class, as far as what kind of work day did they have? Are they fighting with their spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend? Are they up all night studying for exams? Like, I mean, I pretty much think that would be impossible to know, and I think that stuff is important information to know when prescribing intensity for somebody.
I would say so. I think the hardest part of it is because when you ask somebody how they're feeling, they don't know how they're feeling. Like, I've had a client who was a CrossFit athlete who was not doing all the things that Carrie just outlined. The other 23 hours of their day outside of the gym were kind of crappy. So when I got a hold of his previous training and, gave him what I was going to have him do, it was much less volume, much less intense out of the gate, because his body was just running on stress hormones and cortisol 24 hours a day. So when he finally got time to relax, he felt like crap because he had no idea how badly he was actually feeling. He was just so used to being running on fumes for however long he'd been training that way. So to your question, are we supposed to know how people are feeling? It's very hard in a group setting to do that, because those people, a lot of times, when the workout's written for them and they're doing it with their friends and there's not a whole lot of connection between them and the workout, they don't know how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if I have somebody running a individualized strength progression week over week, they can recall, if it's the 4th week into it, they have their own bank of knowledge on this on exercise X, on what it should feel like, or what they at least perceive it should feel like. And if it doesn't feel a way that week, they can give the coach the feedback and say, hey, I feel this way. And it's a little bit easier than, even if it's not perfect, to kind of deduce what the person's feeling.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And to piggyback off of that, with the intensity, is I think the competitive nature that a group CrossFit class provides is both a pro and a very big con. Very big con. Because I believe people's intensity levels do need to be regulated, but sometimes in a class, they don't have a choice. And it's not because it's not because they don't they don't want to take kind of an easy day, and they're able to kind of tailor it down a little bit. But I'll give you a prime example. On Mondays, I try to work out with Michelle. I try to work out with Coach Michelle, and there's some Mondays I probably haven't recovered enough over the weekend, and when she's sitting next to me on a rower, I'm trying to compete like I'm in the CrossFit Games, and I certainly should not be doing that. And if I had a coach, they would probably be telling me I shouldn't be doing that. And that's one of the things that happens in a CrossFit class, is no matter who's next to you or who's around you, you end up competing. And what I think people don't realize is exercise and competitive exercise are two totally different things. And it goes back to goals. If someone's goal is competitive exercise, then they should probably get some additional programming if that's their goal, and as far as, how do we change the intensity in class? It's hard as a business owner and someone who has a hand in the program we provide for the affiliate. What do you guys think would happen, which would be totally appropriate for some people, if I programmed a 10K walk one day? What would happen to classes that day, Matt? Do you think anyone would show up?
I would actually show up that day.
Gary would be there. Yeah.
I'd be there. Work out my speed.
There was a study done. I should probably have more details on it, but it was kind of concluded that when people have control of the intensity of their exercise, they're more likely to stay with the program, which is what you see with CrossFit. People are scared of it in the beginning because they think you need to be these, ripped animals that are squatting 5 times a week and doing whatever the hell else. But when they realize, oh, you only need to go as fast as you think you need to go today. Like, you don't need to do what someone over there in the corner is doing. And they realize that they can kind of find a comfortable groove. And some people, like you said, don't find that until they get burned out or get injured, which is a different conversation. But when people can control the relative intensity of their exercise, they're more likely to find enjoyment and stick with that program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think definitely. It's an education aspect for some people. Like, I know it was for me to a certain extent. Like, I would never even dream of taking a class workout easy a couple years ago. But
yeah, same. Same. Until we learn our lessons. Now it seems like the only days I work out hard are Sundays. Every other Sunday when we test out Carrie's team programming, those are my days where I try to really push it. And then other than that, I'm kind of in this medium kind of zone where I'm kind of just going through it. And then there's days where you work out with someone that's just so good. I'm going to take Matt as an example, and you just throw the towel in. You're like, I'm just going to go as slow as humanly possible because I cannot.
Because there's literally no point.
There's no point in me trying to do this because I absolutely can't. We touched on something earlier that was really cool. When we talk about people's goals, and if someone just told me, if one of their goals was, I want to get stronger, right? And they said, is the group model right for me? And I would have to say it depends. It depends on where you are in your training experience. If you don't have much training experience, you could absolutely get stronger in our group model. But after a while, you're going to need something else, and it may take you out of class. What are your thoughts on that, Matt, for someone that wanted to get stronger? What should they be like? What would you be giving them? What would what would that kind of look like?
If you take someone who's never, I don't want to say never, but has a very low training age, and you give them the strength workouts on main site, or you give them even the Misfit strength sessions for our classes where it's lift 5-5-5, 3-3-3 every 2 minutes, whatever it is. Eventually, they're going to need more nuance. They're going to need unilateral work. They're going to need some isolation work. They're going to need something besides the global movements that we see often in the class workouts. So be that because they either got injured or be that because they plateaued or something else that happened, but there are going to be instances where people no longer can get stronger just doing the one lift 3 times a week that they come to class.
Yeah.
That it's programmed even.
Yeah, I totally agree. Carrie, if you can bucket people that you see in our group model, because what I find after looking at people move for a number of years is I see the same kind of broad issues with athletes in our class. Do you see any of those in the group class, and do you think there's ways that we can fix those issues? As far as maybe providing them with a specific warm-up that they need to be doing that's specified for them instead of what the class is doing?
Yeah, I mean, you could group people into different things. You definitely have some you could categorize people into general categories. Why they have that specific issue probably is where you're going to find the difference more person for person. But in terms of the things that they struggle with more and programming a specific warm-up to meet kind of, this group who struggles more with overhead positioning, this group that over here that struggles more with, good squatting mechanics, this group over here that, on the opposite end, like struggles with good hinging mechanics. Like you could do that, but why those specific issues are happening for each person, you'd have to get more into the nitty gritty of getting to know them as an athlete, assessing them to figure out why. But generally more specific warm up based off those general things you could definitely do. Again, it still might only get to one next layer though of solving the problem or getting them to the next level of improvement.
I think that becomes, as after a while, people develop different limitations. Like as they're learning how to back squat, they eventually develop a sticking point in their back squat. Or as they're learning to deadlift, they eventually, some piece of the deadlift is limiting. You see a lot with people when they're learning how to Olympic lift. There's so much going on that maybe they're really good at getting the bar to their hips, but once they try to pull under it, they're missing that part. So it's the little nuances of those like things we do in class a lot that you can it's kind of hard to address them when you only do them once every 3 weeks and you are in a class of 18 people. Like I might not even see it to correct it if I'm coaching the class. So that could be a problem for that person for a long time.
Exactly. So if someone's in pain right now in class, and a lot of people, will just struggle through it, but Carrie, if you can help that person, what does it initially look like? Like what's your process of figuring out what's going on, and then what's your kind of solution or plan? And this is like a broad answer. I know it depends on the person, but what does it generally look like if someone wants to work with you because they're having, let's just say, they're having some hinging problems where they have problems deadlifting and, and there may be some other things going on. What does it look like when they come work with you?
Well, first it starts with a conversation of just like what's going on with them. Like, what is the issue that they're dealing with? How long has it been an issue? And is it something that they ultimately want to work on? Because if they don't care to work on it, then the conversation really stops there. Like they have to be motivated to want to do something. And some people aren't, and that's totally fine. Like if they are fine to come in and do exactly what they're doing and they're okay with the progress that they can make in other places and maybe not make in that specific move, if they don't want to fix it, that's, entirely their prerogative. But from that, if they haven't already been, if they do want to work on it, if they haven't already been assessed, and at this point we've done a lot better job, everyone who's coming in having some level of assessment before entering classes, do an assessment and start to learn more about them, more about, again, more details about what it is that's bothering them, why it is that they want to work on it, what is an impact, as Matt said earlier, like not just in the gym, but outside of the gym too. Like, why is it that they care about it now? Maybe they didn't care about it a month ago. And then going from there, seeing to figure out if we can start to address whatever that problem is, if it's something that they truly are motivated to work on.
Yeah, that's what I find too, is that people actually have to want to do it and find it and actually enjoy doing it. And that's one of the reasons they come to the group classes, because it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable and it gets them to a certain level of progress. And for people that want more or want to stop scaling, stop modifying and get out of pain, they really need to come out of the group model and to one of you guys and start working on that. So a question for Matt, because I know you have a lot of experience with competitive CrossFit. You're a good athlete yourself, and I know you worked with some folks that wanted to get better. People love the Metcon in the class. They love it. And they actually think that just doing more Metcons with a bunch of messy stuff together is the way they get better. So let's just say I wanted to become a competitive CrossFitter, okay, at a certain level. And I came to you for help, right? And let's just say you found out my thing was my conditioning, right? Because most people think they want to get fitter, right? They want to get in better metabolic shape. What would that look like if I came to you, generally speaking? Like, what kind of assessment would you run on me? And, like, how would you kind of format my workouts? Would I be doing a lot of mixed modal stuff, or would I be doing a lot of, machine work, aerobic work? Like, what can you give me a little glimpse of what that would look like?
Oh, man. So
that's a big question.
Yeah. A lot of times when someone is coming, like, I'll use myself as an example. Like, I started CrossFit doing just the group classes, and then I started being a competitor. I know if I had done it differently, like if I had done it the way I have people do it now, I wouldn't have just started doing more Metcons. It would have been a time to develop an aerobic system, because I think it's making as many different time domains as sustainable as possible. So like, you want to be really good at CrossFit, like, can you do like a 20-minute AMRAP of something, of simple things? Not even, doesn't need to be sexy stuff. Like, can you do a 20-minute AMRAP? Can you do Cindy, like, at a really high level? Can you, what's like a 20-minute, like a 5K? Do you have a 5? Is your 5K under 23 minutes? Like, it's figuring out what their limiter is and attacking it that way. Like, is it their breathing? Do they not breathe in enough air to deliver to deliver to the rest of the body? Is it their actual delivery of oxygen? Like, can they move oxygen to the working muscles, or are they just not, coordinated enough to do so? Or for a lot of the newer people, what you see is they're just not really powerful. Like, if I have somebody, come in the gym for the first time, okay, get on that bike right there and go for 30 seconds as hard as you can. That might not do anything to them because they have no idea what output feels like. Mm-hmm. Which is why a lot of people use like something like Fran as an output of power, but it's, I don't know. It's hard. That's a hard question to answer, I guess, because there's a lot more like science in the sport now than there was a couple years ago. Like a couple years ago, but you're just gonna get better at Fran. You're gonna run faster. You're gonna lift more weight. But now I think it's a little bit more intricate, and the younger a person's like training age is, the simpler it is for them. You need to get stronger. You need to get better at rowing, and you need to get more aerobic. The more someone's training age is older, it's a little bit more in the weeds. But again, it all starts with the assessment and figuring out how they move, what they like doing and what they don't like doing, and then attacking that. Right. And then figuring out their limiter. Like, I personally, when I coach, like to attack movement as much as I can. Like if someone's like their snatch isn't going up at a rate that we'd like to see, or their back squat is stuck at a weight that we want to get more out of, where's the movement fault? Are they in their toes? Are their knees collapsing? Are they not using their glutes? Is it a coordination issue as opposed to a like mechanical issue? Just a lot of things you can look at, but I don't know if I even answered the question, but I think
no. It's a good answer, and I like it because it really does depend. I mean, we really need to pull you out of the group model and create programming specific to your goals that works with our group model, because most people don't want to leave the group entirely. Right. They don't, because they enjoy it. But I'm a firm believer is this model needs to move to some type of hybrid model that includes either group sessions with individualized programming or group sessions with individual private sessions with a coach, depending on what your goal or your limitation is. And what I think about a lot of newer people into CrossFit, and I consider even people doing CrossFit for 2-3 years still really, really new, is they don't understand energy system work. And what I mean by that is there's an energy system that's worked during CrossFit Metcons, and most of the times it's glycolytic, but what's so limiting about it is it's skill dependent too. I can't get someone to push as hard, and I'll give you an example. If we give them a workout of 21-15-9 of toes to bar and power cleans, okay? I will not be able to get them to push as hard as I could is if I put them on an echo bike or a rower and had them do some glycolytic type intervals on that, or even, going out and running 30 minutes is hard. It's hard. And people can put the output on that a little bit better because it's not so skill dependent. So what do people need to work on? They need to get better at the skills, not in a metabolic fashion. And they need to work on metabolic things with some movements that don't take a lot of skill. And I think that's one thing that's important in our onboarding process is we have to develop that before they get into class. And I think we've changed that where we're doing a lot more one-on-ones, and I know people in the gym are seeing it. We're working on a lot more people individually because that's a big time flaw in the group model and the Metcons is that For some people, it just doesn't work because they don't have the skill required to push as hard. They don't have it yet. And that's why CrossFit doesn't work for some people. Is because they don't want to take that time. They want to go right into the group model, and they want to do long, sloppy Metcons. And they think that's the answer. And I think you both would agree that it's not the answer.
Yeah. I think that comes just with teaching people what relative intensity should feel like.
Yeah.
Like maybe they're not actually going to be doing like a really hard effort, like a fast, like oxygen utilizing movement, but for them it's a 9 out of 10 effort. And I think for what it's worth, that's as close as some people really need to be getting. Like even if it is like an aerobic, like in the body physically, they're not working that hard, but it feels like they are for them. I would say the goal is still being met to a certain extent.
Yeah, I agree. And what do you guys think about, is it beneficial to have more of a hybrid model as far as group design plus individual? Do you guys, I mean, what do you guys think about that, Carrie? Have you seen it working, and what's your experience with, creating like more of a hybrid type program?
You mean like hybrid program in the sense of like individualized and group at the same time?
Yes.
I mean, I think if it's done effectively, could work very well. I think it's one of those things where like everyone needs to be on the same page and on board with it to know that that's going to run smoothly. As long as those expectations are kind of outlined, and everyone is on the same page, I don't see why it wouldn't be something that's successful. And especially you'll ultimately, I would hope, have people see more progress, but it doesn't need to be something that's where expectations are lined out ahead of time. Everyone knows what to expect and everyone is on the same page, that it's implemented in that fashion, that, while we're not ever all doing the same thing, we all do these things this way, if that makes sense.
Yep. I agree. So let me just clarify for everyone that may be interested in working with one of the two of you, have had to kind of get this started with either receiving additional programming or private training sessions, is they just have to reach out to you guys, and it really starts with a conversation about what they're actually looking for. And the next step after that would be an assessment depending on, what their goals are. And then with both of you, and also depending on the client, because one of the things with the group model, and we're just going to put that out there, the group model versus individual design or private sessions, is the group design is cheaper. It's cheaper.
Yes.
And individual design is a lot more expensive, and for me, individual design is a lot more expensive because we're tailoring the workouts, we're personalizing them for you instead of customizing them in a class with general broad spectrum modifications. Like our goal with the individual design is really to make improvements and not just be preventative. We want to get you to the best version of you that's, not going to be in pain, can enjoy class. And actually the end goal is to enjoy life,
Right. I think it makes their gym experience more enjoyable also. I mean, if you're enjoying your training feels good. And then when you leave, you feel good. It's, I mean, the price point isn't necessarily something that is going to be like a really big hurdle after you experience it. I think that comes down to the argument of like being motivated to want to train versus like being like, I guess that you would call it inspired. Like, maybe you're not super motivated at the start. Like, is this going to work for me? Like, I have to leave my 4:30 class, but then once they feel the results, it becomes exciting. It becomes something they want to keep doing, and they become inspired to keep working towards it.
Yeah.
Because it's hard as a coach to teach motivation, I would say, for me at least. It's hard to explain to somebody why. Like, without, you know, them feeling it why something is important. But once they do, it sells itself.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Yeah. And you know, I've been you know, I speak to a lot of the folks that work with you guys one-on-one, and I know they understand the value, and they value that at very high. It's the reason why they work with you guys. And you know, the point of this talk was just to, you know, make it public that, you know, we're moving towards that private first and then into the group model or a hybrid version, because I really believe that's the most efficient route to getting people to meet their goals.
Sure.
It really is. So we're gonna end it there for today. I want to thank you guys and let everyone know that just reach out to Matt or Carrie, and if you guys want to get started with at least a conversation, it's worth having about what your goals are, what your limitations are, and kind of get set up either on some additional programming or some private sessions. Get in touch with them. All right, because I know for a fact that they can help you. All right. So, hey, thank you guys for taking time out of your day to hop on this Zoom call and have a good discussion. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
I'll talk to you later. All right. Take care.
Take it easy.
See ya.